Welcome to Image Bearers. My name is Otoma Edje. We're up to season 3, episode 13. It's so exciting to have on the program today Dontaye Carter. We're going to get into a lot today just to learn about his life story, his passion, all the great things that he's doing in Georgia. Today we have also joined with us Shari Simpson and also Georgia Bryant. And they're going to be assisting with the interview, doing the heavy lifting. So, so again, Dontaye, welcome to the program.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
Oh, man. Well, Georgia, why don't you kick us off with the first question?
Sure, I will be happy to. So, Dontaye, my first question is, can you please tell us a little bit about yourself, about your family upbringing, and how you ended up becoming the founding CEO of Carter Media Group? And can you also share what your firm does and some of the clients you have represented?
Okay. Wow, that's loaded.
I know it is.
Yeah.
Take it away.
You know, I spent a vast majority of my life down in Orlando, Florida. I went to Ventura Elementary, Stonewall Jackson Middle School, Colonial High School. Right there in East Orlando, single parent working class household. And, you know, it's so funny. I used to hear my stepfather, who came into the picture later in life, he would always say, you know, man, it's amazing just what your mother did by herself, raising 3 Black boys to be grown men. And, you know, there were so many kids that we grew up with that weren't as fortunate as we are. And, you know, what I like to remind him is, you know, that my mother wasn't alone. You know, there was such a community and such a village. You know, there's no way I go from where I was to where I am and I wasn't, you know, and not be impacted by those around me. And so, you know, I had a lot of people, you know, my football coach, in high school, Tommy Shavers, you know, he's a disciple. And so, you know, just even being able to have that impact, you know, on me in my formidable years was huge. And so, you know, I think a lot of that just shaped me to be who I am. You know, I think going through such adversity at such a young age really opened my eyes to, you know, the plight of just everyday people and what they're going through. And it made me a little more compassionate and not so quick to judge. And, and then I left, you know, just speeding it up a little bit, but I left Orlando. I went to Florida A&M University, met some great couples there. My best friend, he is the nephew of the Turners. They're disciples up in Virginia. And, you know, it took them a while, 5 years, but they were able to kind of reel me in. And I mean, I think that's just
a testament. Them a while, or it took you a while?
I mean, they were doing all the work, so, you know, it took them a while. But you know, I mean, they just loved up on me, you know, and they just continued to show just God, the body, Jesus, and just being able to feel it consistently. And, you know, not feeling like I was shamed for not coming to church when they wanted me to come, and just always feeling like it was open arms, you know, to studying the Bible with Anthony Battle, you know, my senior year in college.
Yeah.
And, you know, it was just Tallahassee's always going to hold a special place in my heart because of that, just the love there and how much was poured into me there. And, you know, from there I started my TV news career. I worked as an executive producer, anchor reporter, was in it for 10 years. And I met this amazing disciple named Karen Creed. And I moved out to Atlanta. And I was, you know, working the news here at CBS 46 and 11 Alive. And I just kind of, it was just, I just felt like I just didn't have that time to just be present, you know, just with my family. And so it just made it difficult. And a friend of mine just told me about this opportunity at the Fulton County District Attorney's Office to lead up their PR department. It's the largest DA's office in the state of Georgia. And they deal with some of the worst crimes. But it was when I was there that I think I was exposed to injustice. Like it wasn't just a documentary, or it wasn't you know, a news clipping that I was hearing about. It was, no, I'm right there in it, and I've got reporters calling me, asking me questions, and know how to respond. And, just a little backstory on the case is there were four young teens between ages of 14 and 16, and they were charged with murder. And their defense attorney the whole time was saying that it wasn't them, it wasn't them, it wasn't them. And it wasn't until the victim's mother took the stand and said, my son came to me in my dreams and said that you got the wrong men on trial. And I think at that point, it was just this huge revelation that happened. The judge ordered a mistrial, sent the prosecutors back. And I remember just sitting in that meeting and listening to the district attorney asking so many questions like, did you do any investigation outside of what the police had done? And the answer was no. And it was like, well, the police said, that this happened. And he was like, well, did you even look at he said the young boys, they all had cell phones on them, right? And they were like, yeah. And they're like, well, did you even try to see which cell towers their cell phones pinged off of? And they hadn't done it. And then when they went back and looked at it, it was like they weren't in the area. And, unless they were flashed, there's no way they could have ran there, shot and killed this guy and then ran back. And, I think it's difficult, right? Because of, the person that died was a young white male. And I think because these were four Black teens, just the history of racism and injustice, it just kind of elevated the spotlight. And I just think there were so many checks and balances that should have been caught and they weren't. And I think, again, you see these cases and they can just be so racially charged. And, I think, I know that was the case that really just took so much out of me. And I remember coming into to the DA's office, into my boss's office, and he was just like, I got to know what's wrong with you. Like you just don't seem like you're giving me the same type of effort. These things that you were doing, you're just not doing. And if you're not happy being here, just let me go and get somebody else. And I just remember thinking, like, how do you even come to work after seeing something like that? I had been there for a couple of months after, and it just took so much out of me. I just couldn't show up knowing that this had happened and knowing that I had, I played a role in defending what had happened, because I was the PR guy. I was the one that had to come up with the talking points, and it really changed me. And it allowed me to see that there's got to be a voice on the other side that ensures that there's balance. And that's kind of what led me to starting Carter Media Group. And, we really focus on working with attorneys, really ensuring that not only are we bringing the humanity back to their client's story, but we're also telling these stories in a way that provides change, because that's what's needed.
Great. Sounds awesome. Well, you touched on it a little bit, but can you tell us a little bit about how you and your wife met, and tell us about Kaylee, because she wants to be like her dad.
Yeah. It was so funny. I was living in Valdosta at the time, and I was traveling back and forth from Valdosta to Tallahassee for church, and it's like an hour's drive. And looking back on it, I can't even believe I was able to do it. But some of the brothers there had reached out. There was a sister that one of the brothers had an interest in Atlanta. They were going to carpool up to Atlanta. So I was like, hey, what the heck? I'll go to Atlanta too. It was a Valentine's Day party. I didn't have anything better to do. And I remember when I walked into the dance, she was one of the first people that I saw, and I just remember thinking like, wow, I gotta talk to her, and I tried talking to her throughout the night, and it was, I wasn't sure how things were going. And so I asked her to dance, and, she declined 3 times. And I was just like, man, like, do you know how much it takes just to ask somebody to dance? Like, this is tough. And so I asked her again, and she was just like, listen, you don't understand. I've got 2 left feet. And, immediately I thought, well, I got 2 right feet. Let's see if we can find a rhythm, And, we hit it off. We ended up exchanging numbers, and just the more and more I got a chance to know her. And I'm just grateful because, she was living in Dallas at the time. I was living in Valdosta. Wow. And I think not being able to just do all the dates every weekend and everything, just like we had to find out what we're going to talk about. And so it allowed me to really get to excuse me, get to know her a lot more. And I think the more that I heard her speak, the more I heard her heart, the things that were on her mind, the more I just fell in love with her. And, you know, that's how we ended up here. And, we've got gosh, she's 3 years old now. And
Wow.
man, Kylie she's just a joy. We were just at the park, letting her run around. And, I was trying to talk to some of the other parents. She was like, "Daddy, do you see me?" And I'm like, "I see you, baby. I see you. I see you. I promise you.
Love it.
I am not distracted. I see you." She's like, "Okay, do you see?" I see you. I see you. You are in full view.
Yeah, that's awesome. So tell us a little bit about how you got into the kingdom, how that decision has impacted your life, and do you have a favorite scripture?
Yeah, I've always felt like God was reaching out to me for a long time, through Tommy Shavers, through Anthony Battle, through Jason Booth, just so many brothers, Lamar Turner, that had been in my life for such a long period before I had actually even become a disciple. And so I just think the more and more that I saw the love there, and I'll be honest, I don't want to make this a race thing, but just seeing Black men in leadership, seeing Anthony Battle leading a church, and seeing the diversity in the church. Because so many times I felt like if I went to a church and there was a Black leader, it was a Black church, and so to see the diversity there, to see how much people loved and admired him, I think that really helped to even just change the way I was able to see myself coming into the kingdom. And so it was those things that just made a huge impact, and I was dating a young lady at the time, and she ended up getting a job in Spain. And I tell folks all the time, I'm just like, man, like God didn't just move her, to another city. I mean, he literally moved her out of the US. It's like anything that's going to be a hindrance to you, I'm getting out of the way. And the fact that, we were in two different time zones, the connection was lagging. It allowed me to just really focus. And I was having some really tough, just me to me conversations about where I'm going in life. And, again, just not having those distractions allowed me to really focus in on what I needed and how and why I needed it so bad.
Mm-hmm. So do you have a favorite scripture that you'd like
I'm
to
sorry.
share with us?
Yeah,
That's okay.
I can't remember which number it is, but it's in Proverbs 31, and just speaking up for the voiceless. I mean, that's just one that's resonated with me for so long. And it's really just become a foundation for what we're doing over at Carter Media.
Amen. All right. Thank you.
Cool. Is it me, Otoma?
Yes.
Well, I'm really grateful to be here, Dontaye, because I'm a huge fan. In fact, I might fangirl out a little bit on you. I follow you on Facebook, and I'm just such a huge fan of what you're doing.
Yeah.
And your voice and your
Thank
passion.
you so much.
So if you see a little red-haired girl with a black pug following you, that would be me. But I just wanted to ask you, I'm going straight on Georgia now. How do you feel about, how did you feel when Senators Ossoff and Warnock won their races in Georgia?
No, I think it was so huge, and the reason why it was so big to me is because, Georgia is one of the original 13 colonies. Georgia's a former Confederate state where you still have these monuments and markers of Georgia's very deep and horrible past. And so the fact that you saw people that have been written off rise up, to me, that was something that was so special. Kind of the running joke here in Georgia, I tell folks, they like to talk a lot about undocumented immigrants, but there's a whole lot of undocumented Black folks running around Georgia too. Georgia has the second largest population of Black people in the nation. We're right behind Mississippi. And so we've always known that we had the numbers, and we knew if we could engage people and really speak to the heart of the things that they really care about, that they were going to show up. And to see people show up I think the most consistent number I've seen, they were saying about 88% of registered Black people voted in this election. Some of the numbers were as high as 91.5. And that's big because, I mean, the fact that, I mean, it's difficult to get 90% any group to do anything.
To do
Right.
anything.
Yeah. So the fact that they showed up
Yeah.
in just such large numbers was huge, and
Yeah.
I mean, Black men and Black women outvoted, their counterparts in every other group of people. So to see us show up in such numbers, I think we really understood what was on the line. And we're at a period where things have got to change. I think one of the things that keeps me fired up and keeps me going is looking at Kylie and understanding that, she's coming up. I think a lot of people are like, man, Dontaye, you were just going hard. But it's like, a lot of people don't realize, like, I was on the bridge on the Edmund Pettus Bridge with John Lewis when he took that last walk before he passed. We all knew that, his battle with cancer wasn't going to end well. And, just having those opportunities to speak with individuals who laid the foundation for where we are right now, being able to have those deep conversations with them and understanding that, like, man, they really did sacrifice a lot. I mean, there are a lot of civil rights activists that people don't know about, who are lesser known. That, I mean, you had people who they are literally living in poverty right now because they sacrificed their education. They decided to march in the 60s, get hit with water hoses, dogs, have hot grits thrown on them. My father-in-law shared the story with me about being hit with balloons that were filled with bleach, and people losing vision and different things. And so, it just, so many people sacrifice so much. And to be able to talk to them, to be able to talk to Fred Gray, like these were people that, I mean, Fred Gray's the last living survivor of the inner circle of the civil rights movement. So to be able to go down to Tuskegee and sit down and have lunch with them and to hear those stories, and to hear the charge that he was giving us about why it's so important for us to keep up the fight. And then, last year going into federal court with him, to sue the government over, gosh, almost 200,000 Black people that they pulled off the voter registration list, So it just, when you see that and you have those experiences with folks that I consider to be titans, right? It just changes the way you see yourself. And then you think about Esther in the Bible.
Yeah.
And when Mordecai came to her and he was like, you alone could save your people, you alone. And if you don't do it, your family will die and God will raise up somebody else to do the work. And I mean, just even thinking about the fact that Esther didn't even have the right or the liberty to go before her husband, who was the king. And she did it in order to save her people. And it's just like, I just think there's so many stories in the Bible where God has clearly laid out what the call is for us. And I just think for me to make it to this point that I've made it to in life and really disregard where I came from is selfish of me. And so I think that's really what pushes me to kind of make sure that I'm considering the least of us so that we can work for all of us.
Amen.
I'm gonna cry. Let's hands up for Stacey Abrams, right? Oh my Lord, she's like modern day Esther. So do you feel like the backlash to their victory is obviously the HB531 and the SB241, the horrible restricted
and I mean
measures?
The bills within the bill of 531. I mean, it's a lot. I mean, the fact that they want to criminalize volunteers giving people water and snacks in line, like, to me, that's the part that just baffles my, like, you want to make it you want to make it an arrestable offense to say, wow, we've got people who've been in line for 5 hours. Let me get them some water. Let me get them some snacks. Let me keep them energized. I mean, the fact that, I mean, you can look at it in certain communities, they don't have access to adequate amount of voter machines. They intentionally slow down the process so that people can't stay in line. They know that people can't take large amounts of time off. But I mean, you see it when Mercedes-Benz, the Atlanta Falcons Stadium, when they opened up their arena and they made it possible for people to go vote, people voted. The same with the Atlanta Hawks State Farm Arena. When they opened up the arena for people to vote, I mean, they had so many. I would literally drive, what was it? It's like 30 minutes from my house. I would drive 30 minutes from my house to go to the arena because I could be in line for 5 minutes and be back out. Whereas, you know, my voter precinct, you know, I'm probably going to stand in line for an hour or two. So,
Oh, it's just so brazen
yeah,
that it makes me literally sick to my stomach.
yeah.
So now I'm just gonna shift gears just a little bit. So what do you feel like the ICOC churches are doing well in fighting against injustice in society, and what do you think that we need to work on?
Yeah. Well, you know, I love individuals like Michael Burns stepping up speaking,
Yeah.
and really bringing context to this conversation, because I feel like we have these conversations, but they lack context. And so whenever there's people who stand up and put the conversation in context, that's what I get excited about. And so I love, there's so many individuals who are stepping up, and I think they've really stepped up before they really should have. Like, I feel like there should have been other folks step up and do this work, you know. But I think that we've got to have a hard conversation about racism and what it looks like, and how the sin of nationalism is eroding our churches, because it is.
Yeah.
And if we don't start to have these conversations, it's going to hurt us all. You know, I know I went to our leadership, and I could literally see this thing coming. I could see it, you know,
Mhm.
with where we were politically. I could see it all coming before the Black Lives Matter movement
Yeah.
went full steam. I said, look, there, people aren't happy, and there are too many. And you know, the perspective I'm speaking of is just the police issue. Like, there are too many bodies that are mounting up, and there's only so much that we can just see without something happening. And
Mhm.
you know, I think Dr. King said it best, where he said that riots are you know, the voices of the unheard. And I mean, it happens
Yeah.
when you don't put those safeguards in place, when you don't step up and fix things that are wrong. And, you know, I remember when I was back in the DA's office, and I mean, we just had so many of these shootings coming up, and he's sitting in there, and it was so bad that he actually went back and started looking up law. And he was like, you know, the last time that there was substantial and significant change to policing in the United States, it was in 1940. Well, the civil rights movement happened in in the 50s and 60s. So all the things that Dr. King and all the activists were talking about, there was no change after that. Like, yeah, there were amendments and there were laws passed, you know, giving us rights to vote and fair housing and so forth. But if you aren't really starting to fix that infrastructure, that's the problem. You know, if this was the business community, you know, they would recognize the fact that they were losing money, and
Yes.
they would make a change.
Yes.
And you know, we've just decided we're not going to make a change, you know. But that's what I'm proud about, you know. Here in Georgia, you know, last year at the height of everything going into the elections, you know, we addressed that immunity clause with policing. So when they shoot somebody, they have to answer for pulling that trigger. You know, there is no, well, I was scared, or I'm just doing my job. It's no, you've got to answer. And I think that's where we've got to be at. It's not about bashing police. It's about accountability.
Right.
And you know, I tell folks this all the time. It's there, we shouldn't be pro police. We should be pro justice, you know, on all levels of our criminal justice system.
Yes. Yes. Um, so just want to ask one last question for you. So the motto for your public relations firm is "Work harder with Carter." So can you share a little bit about your work ethic and well, we kind of know what drives you to keep fighting now, that passion for the unheard. But tell us a little bit about your firm.
Yeah. So the biggest thing I try to do at my firm is surround myself with people who are like me. They may not be disciples, but they care about what's going on in the community. They've got a heart for the community. They've got a heart for justice. You know, there were some attorneys, you know, I've had to walk away from that I couldn't work with because it was more about the money than it was about justice. And you know, that's the thing that's big for me. You know, even when I have kids, you know, reaching out some of the students about internships, my first question is why? Why do you want to do this? What is driving you? I think that what I'm doing, it's such purposeful work that there has to be a reason. There has to be some significance to you wanting to be a part of it. So whether it's you know, the video crews that we hire on and bring in, the social media folks, there has to be purpose to it, because when there's purpose to what you're doing, you're given a little more, right? Like there are times where I don't look at this like I'm clocking in or clocking out. And I know my wife gets on me a lot about that. And so I got to make sure that, you know, we go on vacations and different things that, you know, I'm without cell service and I'm completely cut off. But I just really believe that had it not been for the people that cared about what I did with my life, I wouldn't be here. You know, I went to school with a guy who had scholarships everywhere, you know, to play football. And he finally got to college. He didn't get along with his coach and he ended up coming back home. And this story just really breaks my heart, because it's like he's hanging out with a buddy and they decided to go rob somebody. Well, the homeowner saw them coming up on his camera. And so the minute they broke in, he started shooting. The guy that he was with died on the scene. They ended up arresting him. He was charged with murder. And so I think so many times we're impacted by our environments. And I just really believe if it hadn't been for the people that cared about what I did with my life, I wouldn't be here. And so that's really what I take into what I do, is just showing them that I care. You know, there were so many people that, you know, when I went out for the Black Lives Matter protest, they were just like, you know, we know you don't have to be here, but you're here, and that speaks volumes. But I want them to know that I'm here. You know, that's why a lot of times, you know, one of my colleagues was like, man, I need you to stop wearing sweaters and hats and jeans and put on a suit. Like, you'll wear a suit to court when you're going in with attorneys, but I need you to do it more frequently. But it's like, I want, especially when it comes to young Black men, I want them to see themselves in me, and I want them to believe that they can achieve much more than where they started. You know, where you started doesn't have to be where you end, and that's the message that I hope to get across to them. And so, and that's a lot of what drives it.
Oh, that's amazing. I just your ability to build the beloved community is so inspiring to me.
No, thank you so much.
Thank you so
Thank you.
much
Thank
for
you.
letting me ask you questions.
Oh, no worries.
I think that's it, right?
All right. So
yeah, I think that's it.
yeah, so I do have a couple questions, and then Sherry's going to just share a few things at the end.
Okay.
So I know you had mentioned obviously that, you know, you obviously knew John Lewis. You saw him and met him, and you can talk a little bit about that, and also Freddie Gray. So can you maybe share a little bit more just about your relationship with them and some of the things that you learned from them? I know you shared briefly, but is there anything additional you could share?
Yeah. So I'm pretty sure by now they will say I'm a pest, you know, because that's what I am. You know, I understand that in order
you're married to the woman that you asked 3 times the same night. So I think when you say you're a pest, I think you're probably correct.
No, I am.
But in a good way.
Yeah. It was so funny because I know there are times that I email Mr. Gray, and I'm always asking him stuff, and I know he's got to be like, man, this kid. But it was, you know, it was a brother at North River, Jack Frederick, that introduced me to him. And it was like, once I understood who he was and what he did, I was like, man, I need to like get inside this guy's head. I need to figure out, you know, what to do. And I remember when we were sitting there at lunch, and I was just like, you know, what would you tell, you know, a young brother like me that's really coming up out of your shadows and wanting to make an impact here? And he said, well, I want you to know that the fight is far from over. Like, for me, I made it my life's mission to destroy the institution of segregation, and I did that. but there's so much more that still needs to be done. And he said, that's where y'all come in. And so I would encourage you to find something that's wrong within this world and within this system, and just say, you know what, it's going to be my life's mission to take that one part of, apart and move from there. And so I think, just knowing that, because I was even able to introduce, Mr. Grady, even some of the attorneys that I work with. And I know they were just like, oh man, that dude's a legend. He's like on the Thurgood Marshall, road there. But just them even being able to pick his brain, him really laying down how they won these cases, him telling them, look, sometimes, you don't file a lawsuit to get money. You file a lawsuit to raise awareness about the issues that's going on. And him being able to break all those things down, of course, me being in PR and communications makes it so much easier for me to do my job. And so it's just been just a real honor. And I'm just grateful that God introduced me to him and just allowed me. The brother's 90 years old and still going into court, giving folks a whole lot of energy. And it's like, that's what I'm inspired by. And, he doesn't mince words. He gives it. And so I really appreciate just his love. To do what they did in Alabama at the time they did it, like, in Atlanta, it's different. Everybody could tell you Atlanta's different. There's something in the water in Atlanta. It's another thing to say, we're going to do it in Alabama. I remember when we went to Louisville for Breonna Taylor's, for her protest. And we brought up a few caravans up there, and they changed all the protesting laws after we left, and so it's different in these other places. Atlanta, it's like, Dr. King, Dr. King and all these folks that came before us, they really primed the pump. So people already know, all right, they're exercising their First Amendment rights. Leave them over there in that little corner. Look, y'all can go wherever you want, just don't cross this line, so it's like there's already that conversation that is taking place. Whereas, we went to Louisville and it was like, man, don't come back up here anymore. So it's different. It's different. So
what were the, I know you read his book, Bus Ride to Justice. What were some of the takeaways that you got from that in reference to perhaps strategy or perseverance, or anything you have as takeaways is from that?
I'm such a history buff, and I'm really big about seeing things in context. And so to be able to read his book and to be able to say, okay, so that's why Claudette's story matters. This is why Rosa's story matters. Just really put it all in a context. Even just seeing Bayard Rustin's role in it. He was their PR guy. And I think, he's, to me, just as big as Fred and Martin, because, his whole thing was, he introduced the movement to nonviolence. He was like, if we're going to do this, it has to be nonviolent. He was the one that came up with that whole strategy. And to see how Fred took that strategy and kind of weaved it into the whole civil disobedience and fighting these cases in court, like, it just helped me to see, okay, so we can literally still do this stuff. The problem is we just got to have some folks that have some heart and some energy and some love and realizing that there's still a whole generation of people coming up behind us that need to see it.
Question for you. So I know we just had the, Let It Roll conference. I know Fred Gray was participating, I think Friday night or so. Scenario. So let's say the, Telios and ICOC teachers have this idea and they're like, you know what, we really do need to make some changes. We need to get some consultancy going and just, obviously prayers and fasting and they speak to Fred, and Fred's like, you know what, speak to Dontaye. He's a new generation coming up. What advice would you give to the ICOC leadership if they say, hey, what can we do as far as next steps to really be a power under, and really help those who are going through challenging times, in a biblical way? What would you suggest?
And be honest.
Well, I think my biggest thing is really asking them, who was Jesus and what did he stand for? Like
Mhm.
let's take it back to Jesus.
Yeah.
Where was Jesus? When we read through Mark, Matthew, John, and you're talking about where Jesus was, I mean, who was he healing? Who was he with? Who was he feeding? Who was he talking to? Who was he touching? And I just think that s- so much kind of gets lost in translation because so many people that come to church, um, especially ours at North River, come from a certain financial background, and so it's like, you know, if you're in East Cobb or Sandy Springs, and you know, I live in Sandy Springs, it's like you have to go out of your way to see it. You know what I'm saying? You have to go out of your way to touch. And I think because we're so far away from what the actual problems are, it's harder. Like I remember I had a brother, he was like, man, I'd love for you to go on a mission trip to South Africa. And I was just like, have you been to South Atlanta? Like, have you been there? Like,
Hello.
have I want to be able to make an impact in South Africa, but if my backyard is in shambles, like what are we
Exactly.
doing? And so I
Yeah.
just it comes to the question of where's the compassion and where's the heart? And I think we've really got to have a conversation uh about our emotional intelligence in that aspect, because I just, you know, it's one thing to start baptizing doctors and lawyers and all these people of such esteem. It's another thing when you're baptizing people who are homeless, you know, who don't have anything to give to the church. You know what I'm saying? Like I think, and that's where I'm looking at, okay, the least of us. You know, Jesus did a lot of talking about the least of us, the least of us. And I know it's a difficult and an uncomfortable conversation to have, but I just I think, you know, and there's one of the attorneys I worked with. You know, there was a mother, and her son was shot twice in the back by police, and you know, his it literally took 8 months before they released the video or did anything. And I just remember her, you know, speaking to us in a meeting and telling us that, you know, I felt like I was nothing. I just felt disregarded. You know, I just I didn't, you know, I felt like they treated me like I was some animal, but y'all gave me my voice back. And you know, you gave me my son's story back with the work that y'all were able to do. And, you know, it really broke me, you know, because, you know, that's what it is. You know, we've created this caste system, and people that are on the bottom of that caste system are really left out there to dry. And I think that's the part of, you know, to me that hurts. You know, I remember being a reporter in Atlanta, and we're going and we're covering murders on the South Side, and you see all these abandoned homes, and you don't even think that people are living there. And then the school bus pulls up and you see kids running out, you know, and there's no power in there. There's no water. There's none of these things. And so, you know, I think that was it was so revealing to me, revealing about just what's in my heart, and me just wanting to do a better job of making an impact. You know, I want to study the Bible with a lot of people too, but you know, that wasn't Jesus's only command, you know. And so I just think we got to have a tough conversation about just what that goal is, and what our church is going to look like going into the future.
Thank you. So we're going to go ahead and open it up just for Shari and also for Georgia, just to share a few words, really just thanking you for your service. And then we're going to go ahead and wrap it up.
Well, you know, Dante, I obviously I'm a huge I'm a huge fan, and I love that you talked about context and history, because as a white woman from the South Side of Chicago, where it was like the white neighborhood and the black neighborhood, I really needed a lot of context in order to become a true ally. Um, you know, and so I read a lot of Ibram X. Kendi, Isabel Wilkerson, trying to, you know, to get this together. But I love to see people who are Christians, who are out there doing Jesus's work, his real work. He came to bring good news to the poor, right? You know, and that's the thing, and that's why I'm such a fan. So I just want to say thank you. I really look up to you, and I really have tried to change a lot of things in my life to honor this. So I just want to say thank you so much.
Oh, thank you very much. Thank you.
Well, hello. So I just wanted to say that I so love the work that you do, and you have inspired my heart. I feel like I'm an old lady with one foot in the grave and one foot out. I can't do a whole lot, but I can talk and I can, be on social media. But I really appreciate your heart of just being like Jesus and looking out for the least of them. And I tell you, when you posted that video of Ahmad, it killed me. But at the same time, I was like, wow, someone who can really get the story out. Because for me, that was very painful because my youngest son, Dylan, he and Ahmad are the same age. And so, but my son reminds me of Elijah McClain because he's special needs. And so when I think about the work that you do, and one of the things that really impacted me was one day you posted about being in this neighborhood where there's a jailhouse across the street, and those kids, going to school every day, seeing that and how it impacts their environment, and how we have to hold our political leaders to account because if they don't get the backlash from us, they just do it and keep stepping. So I really appreciate the work and the awareness that you have brought about. And I feel like you're one of my sons, and I'm just so proud of you. And I'm really proud of the dad that you are. And that means a lot just to see you with your daughter, because of course, there's the stigma of Black men and their children, them not being there. And one of the things I've seen so much of, and I love being a part of this church, is because the men and the fathers, the Black men and fathers in this church, they really are fathers. And they nurture their family. Like when I see my son with his boys, I'm like, I'm so jealous. I wish I had a dad like that, And, but I really appreciate the work that you do, but mainly the awareness that you bring about. So I am a big fan of yours. So I'm really proud of you. So thank you very much.
No, and I just really want to express my gratitude too. I mean, both of you do such a great job of really sharing my post and ensuring that it's reaching more and more people. And I'm sorry, I just really appreciate all of that and just the impact, because I think it's easy for people to kind of look and say, oh, this is Dontaye, when it's really a community. And I mean, just even the work that we're doing as disciples to start addressing Jim Crow. I mean, like, to me, it's so huge because all these movements started in the church. The movement to end slavery started in the church. And so when we see something that's wrong, it's on us to say something. I mean, we've got the spirit in us. We're fired up. We're burning, and I just think that we can make a huge impact if we can just really look beyond just our community views, right? If we can just get outside and see the impact that we can make.
Well, thank you so much. I know that it's not always sunshine and roses. There's a daily grind of so many things, and there's a hardship, and there's what the heck are they trying to do with this bill? Situations that come up on a regular basis. And so we just wanted to, again, for our viewers to find out to learn a little bit more about you, but also to say thank you. So we're hoping that this is a little bit of a bright spot in your day to just let you know how much we appreciate all the work that you do, and prayerfully will give you a little bit more oomph to keep going and keep fighting, for all of us. Because and you are fighting for all of us, because if Ossoff and Warnock had not won, I don't think the 1.9 trillion would have been passed. There's so many things that would not happen. And so we're all in this together. So we just want to say thank you for everything that you do.
Yeah, thank you all so much. I appreciate it. I mean, this has been extremely encouraging. So thank you all.
Amen. That's awesome.
Well, for those of you that enjoy this episode, please click like, consider subscribing, and sharing this with your friends. Thanks again.